Hey everybody, we're trying this again. It's 8:20. We're a little late hopping on, but welcome to Thursday Charla. I don't know what was happening with the other video. It just was not cooperating with me. So I'm really sorry if you got booted off. I'm just gonna give it a couple minutes. Marcella is gonna hop on. We'll see if it works better this time. It was a little frustrating. There we go. Please work.
It was. I was like, why isn't it working? I was like, okay, I've requested it, and then it was like, your request has not been sent. I'm like, it was. Don't lie. So I don't know what's happening, but whatever. Instagram was being rude. Hey, Piyush, it's nice to see you. We owe you a playlist. Sorry, every time we talk about making a playlist, I'm always like, Piyush wants one. Not that you're the only one. There's other people, but always thinking of you whenever we talk about it.
Oh, in our hearts.
Pardon me, what'd you say?
I just sang a song. I just serenaded everybody.
Oh, okay, that's our playlist.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I love it. Just that.
Stay
Just
tuned.
that. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I like it.
What is it?
So
It's hot.
yes. Sorry?
It's a hot one today.
The weather?
Yeah. Like it's just
It
like
is,
hot.
yes.
And it's hot.
Sorry. I know, I'm sorry. Hey Tasha, your house is always warm. That is true.
Except when it's always cold in the winter.
Okay,
Ha
why can't you just make it a thing where they become a thing together and it's nice for you, but
Yeah.
you don't have that technology.
I have like kindling for insulation in this house. So for anybody who doesn't know, it was built in 1914. So basically like a million years old. And they didn't have like building codes back then. So when the owner of the house was like
Hey, Rania.
doing the bay window that I sit in front of, he found like newspapers from like 1942, like during World War II, and it was like, and they were like in pristine condition. And so apparently it was like this really, really cool find. But I'm just like, that explains why my house is always cold, because he hasn't looked at like all of it. So yeah, insulation.
Insulation, yeah. Yeah. Ugh. At least you were sheltered from the storms and stuff. I don't know. I always know it's not to point out the silver lining. I don't know why. It's a shelter, shush, Marcella, shush, shush, shush. Anyway, one of those people. So annoying. So annoying.
So
Let people complain.
So it's 8:23. It is Thursday, July 15th. I think we should kind of jump into it because we've got like a really big charla that we want to talk. Just something that we've been thinking a lot about, something that is kind of top of mind for us as, two women of color. This week we're talking about white saviorship, which is a problem in activist spaces. It's a problem everywhere, but we're seeing it a lot in activist spaces where like well-meaning white people they just kind of want to take over, and they end up adopting struggles that don't belong to them and co-opt things, and then they start talking over POC, and before you know it, the space that you created that was meant to be a safe space has become a very colonized space. And yeah, so we're going to talk about that. And Mars, I know you have some pretty big thoughts on that. Why don't you start?
Sure. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't know why whenever I get things at me, I'm always like, I don't know where to start. Clearly I'm not the better at this than my counterpart. Tanya is like very easy and like breezy on the camera, and I'm always just like, oh, camera. But yeah, no, basically, to be completely candid, recently I think we did a charla where we talked about what was happening with us in terms of an organization and White Devil, I believe we called the person. Was that what we referred to them as?
What did we call them? I remember calling them white devil, but it might
Okay,
have.
okay, sorry. That's what I said, but I was just confirming because I was like, I don't remember what we called them. Anyway, and the reason that we called them White Devil was because they basically, well, first of all, the organization weaponized this white person to talk over us, to kind of, you know, victimize us, and not only that, but you know, really inserted themselves in a position that really they had no business being in. And you know, it's, I don't really want to get into specifics, obviously, but the thing is, this person has a history, because you know they're still alive, has a history of doing this sort of thing with other racialized people, where they feel like this weird sense of ownership. And I say ownership because like they come in defense with like their guns ablazing, you know, and they're just like, pew, 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 you lighter skinned person of color have victimized this like darker skinned person of color. And I'm going to be here to like tell you how you did this person wrong. And it's like, okay, yeah, that was, you know, not necessary. And also why are you getting involved in a, quite frankly, in a situation that does not involve you. So ever since this situation happened, I really thought that Tanya and I should talk about white saviorism, because it is something that um, it happens. And especially if you are women of color who are not, how can I say this, who are not Indigenous or Black, we have to tread a very fine line where obviously we need to be respectful of, you know, Indigenous voices and Black voices in particular as well. Because obviously, you know, the way that society is set up, unfortunately, you know, those two groups are the ones that get the most vitriol and the most hatred and the most horrible things happening. But that does not negate the fact, it's not oppression Olympics. It doesn't negate the fact that we are two women of color. I am darker skinned, you know, so I've gone through life with this pigment, and I've gone through life with, you know, people, you know, being throwing microaggressions in my face, or making really wild assumptions, or saying things that are quite frankly violent because of the way I look. And while I cannot speak to the experience of, you know, a Black woman or Indigenous woman, it does not negate the fact that harm is also done to me. So when this person got involved, it was very violent, and I use the word violent, and I always feel weird using this violent, but word violent, because it always feels kind of theatrical, but it really was violence against Tanya and I. So anyway, this person is a white savior. They're popular in spaces here. Hey, sweet Z. So, you know, we just really wanted to give kind of like a, not a refresher, but talk about white saviorism and how white saviorism is a detriment to, you know, all of the things that we're trying to do in our activist spaces, because you don't want to infantilize, and you don't want to diminish, you know, the voices and the work that POC are doing, or think that you're greater than them because you XYZ, like maybe you're more educated, maybe you come from wealth, I don't know, but that does not negate the fact that lived experience is still like valid. And not only that it's valid, but it also brings a lot to the table. So anyway, I've gone on for a long time, and I don't know if I made sense, but Tanya, on to you.
You made great. I want to go back to that thing. Sorry, to that example that you brought up. And I'm just going to quickly circle back, because I also think too it's important to remember that it is. So this particular white savior, this particular white devil,
Sorry.
on themselves, it's true. Yeah. Kanisha says violence is 100% the correct word, and it absolutely is. I totally agree. You know, the thing is that like this particular white devil took it upon themselves to choose a side, which first off they have no business doing. As white people, if there's a conflict between POC, like this is something that we need to handle on our own. It is not for white people to come in and be, you know, like make themselves enforcers of what is good, what is bad, what is allowed, what is not allowed. That's not your lane. And we have our own people who are going to call us in if we are not acting right. The problem, in my view, was when we were being abused and harm was being leveraged against us, and this white devil took it upon themselves to side with the person that they felt had more power and silenced us. And you know, they accused me of being anti-black, which I took very seriously. I immediately shut down and started like going through all the mental gymnastics of, oh, maybe like there's a blind spot, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm, you know, whatever. And I started like really sitting with it and unpacking it and being like, you know, because we all have blind spots. To say that we don't is ridiculous. To say that, you know, that none of us are racist is also ridiculous. We all internalize varying degrees of racism, right? And based on our experiences. And, you know, Mars made a very good point. You know, she is darker skinned. And so I have like a greater proximity to whiteness, which at different points of my life, you know, has been used against me. At different points in my life, that has worked to my benefit, right? In professional spaces, it works very, very well for me that I'm not seen as too ethnic, right? But it also, I feel like, makes some white people forget that I'm still a person of color. I still walk into a room and I read as a woman of color. Hey, Brad. I read as a woman of color. And so, you know, I get the microaggressions and stuff. So if you, but, you know, this also does not mean that as Latinas, we do not have a history of anti-blackness. So if someone tells me that I'm being anti-black,
notorious.
Oh, yeah. So
You're
I took it really seriously.
Jeez,
I remember I was like sitting in that discomfort, and Marcella, who saw right through it, was like, none of what you said is anti-black. And it took me a couple of days to come back to it and be like, yeah, literally none of what I said was anti-black. And we were being abused. And I think we were gaslit. And Marcella was like, you think we were, what do you think we were, you think we were gaslit? And I was like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And it messed with me for weeks, like weeks.
We're still recovering. We're still recovering. Like, I mean, like, we are very, like, our spoons are still depleted.
And, you know, what's funny is out to our community to be like, like, do we need to fix this? Like, how do we do this? And, like, the response from community was overwhelmingly like, whoa, these people were hella fucked up to you. And Marcella was like, yeah, I know, right? And I'm like, were they? And like, like still like kind of, which is ironic because, you know, normally I'm the one who's like, that's some bullshit. And Marcella's like, well, maybe we can hold space. And I'm like, no, they're being hurtful. And this time it was so obvious to Marcella. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? And it was really, so we're still kind of dealing with it. But the response that we got from community was like, yeah, no, this is really fucked up. And, you know, the problem is that, like, this person we knew, this was someone who was being called out in activist spaces. People decided to deal with them in whatever way that they felt was appropriate. I don't agree with the way that it was dealt with personally.
God, no. Yeah.
I think that, you know, what happened to this person, to this white devil, was really reckless and really dangerous. But also at the same time, I'm like, you made enemies in literally every circle, and you don't have the clout that you think you. And like,
well, and it has, and like
people talk down and continue like beaking. It's like you know, people are gonna, you know. So like, I'm not surprised. But I remember when I heard what happened, I was really freaked out. I was like, whoa.
Oh God, no, because it was violent as well. And like, that's the thing though with like, when you are. When you are white, you embody everything that has to do with whiteness. So the way that you move throughout the world is very white devil. Sorry, Kanish. It's just really cute. But yeah, you move through the world, you know, kind of enforcing white views and white, like you frame the world from your very white perspective. So, you know, you inherently think that everything you do is like of a higher moral ground, and that anybody else is kind of wrong because they're not, you know, they're not you. So I feel that with this person in particular, I kind of think that, you know, what happened to them was a surprise, first of all, because I think that they did think that they were going to be protected, but that's the thing, like nobody is safe from their bad behavior, and we need to be fucking accountable. Like if you hurt somebody and you perpetuate so much harm to other people, that to the point that these people, and it's not just, I'm not just talking about Tanya and I'm also talking about other people who have been victimized by this person, but to the point that these people fear for their safety and stop doing things that they were doing in the activist spaces. Who are you helping, you know? And that's something that really resonates with me in terms of like white saviorism. Like, we follow this really awesome account, and I'm pretty sure most of you guys follow it too, because I'll see you guys like it. But white saviors, what's it called again? White saviors.
No more white saviors. No white
There
saviors.
Yeah, no white saviors. And like, it's run by white people, but like the thing is, they call their people in, which, you know, that's their lane. It is not up to us POC to be educating white people in terms of anti-racism and racism. It is up to white people to call it out and make it known that what they're doing is harmful. So we really appreciate the work that these people are doing. And one of the things that they always talk about is how people will do like these really sketchy things especially in countries in Africa, but you know, they also do things in Asia. They also do things in, like, gosh, the inner city in like the inner cities in North America. So there is no border with white saviorism. It is everywhere. And when you think about like the fact that, you know, even the fact that I say we, but it's the collective, you know, with Christianity, we've made Christ a white person, and nobody is comfortable with the idea of Christ being a darker skinned man. Why? Because we're comfortable with people of non-color being saviors. And and them especially, like white people cannot fathom the possibility of, you know, there being a black Christ for that reason, because I think they cannot imagine being saved, literally being saved spiritually by somebody of color. And so it's just really fascinating to me the way that, you know, the way that white people kind of see their whiteness as, you know, synonymous with purity and with virtue. And you know, that goes into like the way that white women are seen, right? Like, if a white woman is crying, those are fucking weapons. You know, like there are so many instances of, like, you know, white women and men as well, but mostly white women who like will cry these crocodile tears, and you know, it will be a really violent outcome for like the person of color. And you know, like we even see it with white Latinas who use their fucking white tears when there's a black person involved. And it's just, you know, those kinds of things really get to me as a Latina, because I'm like, girl, like, that's so gross.
Sorry, and can we talk about that for a second? Okay, so primeramente, if you're going to start like coming up here with your anti-black racism, and you're going to
right,
like be calling the police on community members because you have because of some perceived slight, and then turn on and be like, oh, I can't be racist, I'm a woman of color too, I'm a Latina.
Doesn't go both ways.
You need to sit down. You can't have it both ways. Either you're here for community or you're not. And you know, the thing is that we all fuck up, right?
Oh, God,
but when you're pulling literal white people shit, and then you come out and you're like, oh, I can't be racist, I'm Latina. No, we are all, let's just all start by saying we are all racist. The difference is to what degree have we internalized this racism. Let's just start with that. If we can all admit, okay, there's probably some fucked up shit that I have to work on in myself, that I have to unpack and unlearn, so that I can stop perpetuating harm in my community and in other communities, right? Let's just start there, okay? And then, like, let's talk about anti-blackness and Latinidad, and we talk about it quite a lot on our charlas. We need to make sure that, like, if somebody tells us that we are harming Black people, that we, like, really stop and sit with it, which is why I was really freaked out when they were like, you're being anti-Black. But let's also be very cautious not to weaponize identity politics for the sake of winning an argument, for the sake of, like, do you know what I mean?
So that not just weaponize identity politics. No, like the organization weaponized a white person that they know has a fucking reputation for going after like light-skinned women of color. That to me, like, honestly,
you know, the part that gets me is that I really thought we were friends. Like, this person came to my house, they met my kids, we were working on stuff together. I was like, we're tight. And you know, like, it just, like I really didn't see it coming. And they came to my house a few times and I introduced them to other friends and I was like, hey, here's a super rad person.
Yeah.
And like, I just like didn't see it coming. But like,
why
again,
would you,
you know,
right? Like you're not gonna, and that's the thing, you're not gonna
like,
assume, like I think that that's like the scary thing with and I know we talk about this all the time because I have a lot of white friends, as like you know, and I think you do as well, but I think most of my best friends are white. And I know I give a lot of allowances to my white friends because I have known them since we were 7, others since we were 11. So they've been, you know, in my life for literally 20 years and more. So while, you know, they've said problematic things, I know that they're trying to be better. But the thing is, and I know we've talked about this too, there's like this weird, and this is why I don't usually date white men, but I cannot say this anymore. But I mean, like, because that's the thing, I will make allowances for my friends because my friends, I've known them since I was 7. So I know their heart, you know? Whereas with like men, because I've been victimized by men, I'm more careful with them. I'm more cautious with them because I know that they will prioritize whiteness over me, you know? And that's the thing that I think that really hurts us when we're betrayed by white friends, is that like we were friends, like, you know, you've done some messed up shit, but we are friends, like why are you doing this? And I think it's just like we have this mutual friend, Tanya, and I remember they said something once in like a chat where they were like, white people don't understand kinship. And like that really struck me because I'm like, that's essentially it. It's like there's a community, there's a sense of community within POC spaces where, you know, you see it with Asians, you see it with Latinx people, you see it with like the Black community, where you see it with Indigenous people, where especially like in Latin countries, like, or even here, like we know that somebody's like down on their luck, everyone will get together to like help this person, you know, like we'll get them blankets, like we'll get toys for the kids, we'll make sure that they, you know, whatever they need. And I feel that, not to say that white people don't understand or don't have that level, I just don't think that they understand it to the level that we do. Do you know what I mean? And so it's one of those really interesting things where like I notice it with with setting limits. Okay.
what?
No, but seriously, it's hard. It's hard because like you're, you know, like you have to be really careful of who you allow into your space. Like it's very easy to let your guard down when you become friends with somebody. And you know, the fact that some people will weaponize their whiteness to, you know, put you in your place and to tell you that you are a bad person because of XYZ, that's fucked up. Like that's not what a friend does. A friend will, you know, if you've done wrong, the friend will call you in, will, you know, allow you to be a human being who makes mistakes, and will let you grow from that. They won't like insistently talk over you and your friend for 2 fucking hours to the point that your friend, this is me by the way, I was I was fucking cold the whole time. I was like, and then afterwards I'm like, I'm dizzy, and afterwards I'm like, oh, that's a trauma response, you were traumatized. And like the thing is, like I, you know, I was freezing, I, you know, I was dizzy, I, you know, I think I started becoming a people pleaser during the meeting, and I know Tanya was reacting differently, and it's just one of those things where like friends don't victimize other friends. And so like when you think about white saviorism, you know, you don't expect them to, you know, they're there to help you, but then they turn around and like they stab you in the back. And that's the thing with white saviorism. And you see it in the media, you see it in like on no more white saviors, the account, where this well-intentioned or well-meaning white person goes to, you know, some foreign country, and you know, they start to do good for the community, but then you find out that they actually don't have a medical license, and they're performing all of these exams on like children, and it results in multiple deaths of children because they're not a fucking medical professional. Like, did you hear that story? It's on No More White Saviors, this one woman. Yeah. And so it's just, and so it's just one of those things where I'm just like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, I've been ranting a lot. This is, Ted and I have wanted to talk about this for a while.
No, but I think you made some really good points. And one of the things that you talked about, okay, so you talked about a couple of things that I want to touch on. On the subject of white saviorism, you know, we ultimately, like, allyship is important, right? If you believe that racism is wrong and you are invited to be in a space where you can help dismantle that, it's not your job to police other POC. It's your job to take that knowledge and call in your people, like handle your people, right? But then, you know, one of the things, so Marcella and I talked about this quite at length, um, uh, that, you know, when we talk about like our white friends, you know, when we invite our friends into our spaces, right? And then our friends cause harm, it's also our job to protect other POC within that space, right? And so, like, you know, I draw those like hard boundaries. And, you know, it's really hard when you're talking about your own people. You know, because we have a responsibility to call them in, right? We have a responsibility to protect the other POC in our space, right? And so, like, Marcella and I have an agreement, right? Like, if my people act out, I call in my people, and I don't allow them to continue to participate in the space where they continue to leverage harm. Marcella does the same thing. Like, if Marcella's people, if her white people come into the space and they start like acting stupid, it's her job to call in her people. I don't want to have to do the work. If I do have to do the work, I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings. I'm not going to be nice about it because you were invited as a guest in this space. You know, as far as I'm concerned, like, if you like can't behave, you have to leave. That's as far as I'm concerned. And it's not my job to know your heart. It is my job to protect other POC who are in the safe space, right? So, like, you know, when we have white people that are perpetuating harm, and when I think back to this white devil in particular, who was invited into these spaces and then started perpetuating harm, and there were backdoor conversations that were being had with other POC activists who were like, stop policing POC activists. It is not your lane. It is not your job. And this
you're
person
causing
is
more
like,
harm than anything.
you're causing harm.
Yeah.
And this person continues on their like blissfully ignorant path of being like, I know more than all these other people and it's my job to handle it. And it's like, no, I've revoked consent to you continuing on this, like, suicide mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then people come for you and you're like, what am I supposed to do? These people told me, and I'm like, I learned after the fact that these people told you to step down and you were not listening. So I kind of don't feel bad for you. And then they're like, I'm not a bad person. I'm just supporting community. And it's like, no, literally everybody told you to sit down. Literally everybody. And you kept going. And, you know, I start like piecing things together after the fact. And I'm like, this person has been harmful in this space for a long time. And like, they just like refuse to back down.
Mm-hmm.
And when we finally, like, I just like cut ties because they were like, hey, do you want to continue to work together? And I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with you ever. Like, don't reach out to me. And that's when they started like, well, like just like subtweeting about us and like trying to like, and nobody paid attention because it was idiotic.
Mm-hmm.
And
our friends knew. Our friends knew because like we told, like I told a friend because I was like, I can't be friends with this person anymore. I can't, like, I'm obsessive now. Like, I'm checking their account because I know that they're talking about us. And like Tanya had a few friends too who were like, Kate, they're still talking about you guys. I'm like, why? Please leave us alone, you know?
Yeah, and like it just became really, really toxic. And I was just like, I really like, I was so hurt. I was like, I don't want to know. I don't want to hear about you. I don't want to like, whatever.
Engage.
And now this person is like being dragged, and by people who had it out for them.
Blood. Yeah, and like they were out for blood. Like, that's the thing.
Can we actually talk about that? Can we actually like call it what it is and then actually address that as another form of violence? Are you okay with that, or do you think it'll give it away?
I think most of the people that are following, like that are on here, know who we're talking about. So I think, you know what? Let's just. They were called out massively. I honestly, like, I say we can talk about it, to be honest.
Okay. So this person was recently doxxed, which freaked me out because I'm like, if this person can be doxxed, then like, you know, for a split second, I thought I was like more important than I was. And I was like, what if someone doxes me? And then I was like, oh wait, I don't I don't hide behind an anonymous account. If I say something, you know I said it.
But
But
also
like,
that, can I just like interrupt for like 5 seconds just to remind us that that was a real, like a very real fear that I had for your life, to the point that you and I were actually making a contingency plan of where you could hide if they did dox you. Like, this
well,
is
because
how
I have
bad
kids.
it got. Well,
If
and
I had
that's the
kids, yeah,
thing.
like, really
And like
freaked
that's
out.
the thing. I remember. And so like when we were worried that they were gonna dox Tanya, I remember like I was freaking out because like Tanya has kids. Tanya, you know, their partner lived there at the time as well. And I was just like, if it's not just Tanya, it's her kids, her partner, her cat. Like, there's a lot of people and
And the
beautiful. Well, and the cat, frijoles would be in trouble too. Like, you don't know what like fucking Nazis would do with that information. Like, it's terrifying. Like, I think I even talked about like hiring like somebody to like some muscle to like protect you, and you're like, no. And I was like, so like I went like way out there, but I was terrified. And you know, like I remember Tanya told me to make all my other accounts private, which I'm not a private person. Well, I am private, but my social like my socials aren't really like a big deal for me. I'm like, if somebody wants to follow me, follow me. If they don't, no big deal. But I did make them private because I was like, I don't want something to happen to my parents. So it was the fact that we were so afraid of that, like that outcome, you know. And it's because, you know, we knew that this could happen, because that's what happens in, you know, these kinds of really volatile situations. So anyway, go back to you. Sorry, friend.
proud of the fact that they have like doxed other people, right? And I'm just like, I can't, if anything happens to the kids, I don't know what I'll do with myself, right? And so I was
Yeah.
really freaked out. But then, okay, so now this person has been doxed, and you know, it honestly freaked me out. And you know, I think sometimes POC, and you know, to me it smells like white people shit. It really does. But as POC, sometimes we forget, let's just say for a second that it was a POC who did it. This is an extension of this like really narrow, like carceral thinking, where when someone causes harm, you feel like you need to punish them
Yeah.
to like your fullest ability to do that, and to seek like
Punitive
retribution.
justice.
And
Yeah.
I don't think that that's constructive. And you know, it's like, if we believe in justice, then we believe that people can change. I believe that this person who has experienced a lot of bullying and a lot of, I think they thought that they found themselves in this space, and that this was a space where they could finally forge some sort of an identity and some relationships, you know, where they could feel really secure. And this is just like my like armchair psychology. I could be out to lunch here, but like, I think that being in this space meant a lot to them. And because it means a lot to them, if we could have had some sort of an intervention where it was like a face-to-face discussion, where we had actual accountability and growth in a way that was like safe and loving, I think that this person could have been reformed. But there was a lot of ego. And like, I just don't think that doxing is appropriate in any circumstance, because you literally put people's lives at risk. And so by doxing this person, you know, the other thing too is I think about this person's ties to indigeneity, right? And one of the concerns that I had, that I think is a very valid concern, is that because, okay, so after I heard that this person was doxed, I went out and I like looked, right? And I saw that people, and it was, I remember it was a white guy who tagged a nation that this person had done some work for, and were like, hey, how does it feel to have this person who's like harming other POC working for you, blah, blah, blah. And my first thought was, okay, so now we can expect a lynch mob of upset white people showing up at this band office with their pitchforks being like, give us this person, or like, you need to fire this person, or being like, we need to stage a protest or something. Like, this is something that I feel like white people would do, you know? And so now I'm like, okay, so now the people who like live now the people who live in this nation have to worry about white people invading their, like, it's not enough that you invaded their like territory, but now you have to actually go, like, you know, where they live, and you know, that's like white people have to be invited there, and they're just going to show up there because it's like you can find out where it is. And now we can expect that these people, like, they can't even feel safe, like, you know. And I'm just like, fuck it. And you know, and this is the thing, is like, I feel like doing that was so short-sighted.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
That like you could be putting other people at risk. And this person has friends who are POC that for whatever reason, you know, support them, right? And what if these people are also in danger due to their proximity to this white devil? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. No, for sure. Sorry. I'm just like, oh God. No, but you're
So
right. And that's
and
essentially it.
and the thing is that there were enough of us in this activist space that, in like, who knew their identity. Lots of people knew this person's identity. And I feel like we had a responsibility to just like actually show up and sit them down and be like, you need to stop.
Mm.
And I think we failed in that way.
That's a good point. I hadn't even considered that. But to be fair, the information was already out. Like, what could we do? You know what I mean?
That's the thing.
Like,
And
I mean,
they made so many enemies in so many different spaces that I really feel like, and they just kept like, they're still, I think they're still running their mouth off and still
yeah,
being
probably. Yeah.
like mighty. And I'm just like, you need to learn when to quit, because
Mm-hmm.
it's catching up with you. Like, you have been doxxed. You need to sit the fuck down. And the thing is that the white people that they associate with, they're not going to hold them accountable.
Boom. And that's essentially it. Like, that's the sad thing. Like, they're still running their mouth because they haven't learned their lesson. They're still, you know, victim. Like, they have like this weird. That you're trying to bring to make people understand why you did the things that you did, but also, buddy, you've already caused so much harm. Like, just shh, like,
Stop
sit down.
Stop
Pardon?
defending your actions. It's like, stop defending your actions. What are you still doing?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so it's just, you know, and it's really interesting because, like, when you think of white saviorism, like, there's a lot of like good intentions, but like, as they say, all like the road to hell leads, wait, like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's essentially it. Like, that's essentially it. Is that, you know, good intentions, man. The, like, really think about who it's benefiting when you're doing all these good things. Is it self-serving? Is it actually helping the community? If it's ultimately doing more for you, then it's not really a good thing. Mm.
And that's the thing. And so I'm just like, I'm really like, I don't know, like, I kind of feel for them, but I'm
Of
also
course, because you're not a monster.
oh, but at the same time, me like kind of wants to just be like, hey, are you okay? But then part of me is like, no, you harmed me so much.
Yeah.
And I'm still like I'm just getting to a place where I feel like I can like trust myself again. And like, because
oh gosh, no, don't open that kind of worms.
no, yeah, like I just like it was really, really traumatic. So, you know, when we talk about white saviorship, you know, we're talking about white people coming in here and colonizing what are supposed to be safe spaces and like hijacking conversations and centering themselves in it. And you don't have to be white to do it, right? You just need a proximity to whiteness to do it as well. And it's really important to remember that like, you know, as a lighter skinned Latina, I'm still a woman of color. Don't get it twisted, right? But not every space is for me to like give my unsolicited 2 cents on. If I don't have lived experience in that space, you know, it's not for me to comment. And I think that that's something that we all have to keep in mind. If you have a proximity to whiteness, not everything is for you. And if you feel
And you have to
compelled,
be comfortable with that. Like, I know
and
that that's a tough thing for white people to understand, is that like not everything is for your consumption. Not everything is for you. And if it's not, okay, on to the next thing. But it's a really hard concept for, like, I find white people especially have a really hard time understanding this.
and that's the thing, like, we have to be really, really cognizant of
Mhm.
what our limitations are and what we should just like not be commenting on. And I think that that's really, really important. And so, when we talk about white saviorism, it it extends to light skinned POC as well. We are really guilty,
Mhm.
and we have to atone for our own shit. And so, we have to be mindful of the way that we take up space in different movements and in different,
Fuck yeah. Yeah. Like,
so
and I totally appreciate you saying that, because I think that that's another thing, that you do really, as anybody who's involved in this kind of work, or in this kind of, in these kinds of spaces, I think another thing that we need to be aware of is the fact that, like, we all have privilege, whether it's like straight privilege, whatever privilege. I can't believe that the only one I could think of was straight
privilege.
privilege. But no, like, there's like, but that's the thing. You have to be aware of it, because like you walk around this world causing harm unintentionally. But that's the thing. Your intentions don't mean anything if you're continually causing harm to these like marginalized people. So it's one of those things that you really have to be careful, and you really have to think a few steps ahead of your actions, because if you're continually causing harm to people, then like, should you be in that space? Maybe you should take a step back. Maybe you should change lanes. Like, there's a lot, like, I'm really glad that you said that, because I think that that's something that everybody kind of needs to be aware of. Like, it's just, it's a shame, that people are kind of really blinded by their egos, because I think that that's essentially why people are white saviors, is that they think that only they can save, or only they can help whoever they're doing this for. And that's a really self-serving thought, and that's a really egotistical way of viewing your relationship with the people that you're helping, or the things that you're doing. And it's just really, really heartbreaking that humans are so but I think, like, I think it's just a human thing where we really get really self-involved, and we don't really realize like how we affect others. And it's, yeah. Anyway, Shadik said, need to make a habit of not speaking on behalf of people you do not have shared experiences with. And that's essentially it. Hold on. Mr. Omar made a really good question, or posed a really good question. So based on this whole experience with the white devil, how would you call out this white devil behavior next time it happens? It's a very good question.
It's a very good question. I think in the same way that Marcella was talking about, with her friends, she knows their hearts, and so she knows that they're not harmful, and so she gives them the benefit of the doubt, even when they're being harmful. I think that I did that. I gave this person the benefit of the doubt, and, ended up being burned by it. I think the next time I see something like this, I'm going to be less forgiving. I have to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we think about what our obligations are, we have an obligation to call out white supremacy, even when it's our friends. And I thought that we were having those conversations, but I didn't realize how many backdoor conversations were being had with this person. That, why
The
would I?
organization? Is that who
No,
you're referring to? No?
referring to the white devil. Like, there
Oh,
were
okay.
activists who were reaching out to this person privately and being like, you need to stop now. Like, that's enough. Like, you can't keep doing this. You're crossing a line. And they were like, oh, but, and they just kept like justifying their actions. And a lot of people were doing that. And I was not aware of that. So I think we have to be much more, rigid in the way that we deal with that, and less understanding. I think that there are ways to shut things down while still being loving. The problem is, okay, so there's another example of white saviorship that's happening right now in a circle, in an activist circle. Marcel, I'm sure you know what is happening, but
I love that. I'm just like, what? Sorry.
where, you know, somebody harmed a number of POC community members, and and now they have turned around and are like, you didn't give me a chance to defend myself. I was being attacked. And then now they're like moving out of the city. They're like moving away. I know you know what this is. You can talk about it later. But yeah, now they're just like getting mad and they're just like moving away. And um, you know, we're dealing with activists who, you know, have been doing outreach work and working with like POC community members, like predominantly Indigenous community members that are gatekeeping and that are, you know, co-opting some of the work. And so, you know, when there was an attempt to like a call-in, one person in particular became especially defensive when their friends were like, look, like, you know, we love you, but like, you really harmed me. And, you know, this is what we need you to do in order to, you know, in order to repair it. And then they have come back and have been like, you guys attacked me. You guys didn't let me explain. From what I understand, this person outright lied, right? And is now being like, no, you guys like didn't want to listen to me. I felt attacked. You guys ganged up on me. And then now they're leaving the city. And I'm just like, this is a very over the top response to what did not have to be a big deal. It was like a loving call in. And so, you know, it goes back to that white saviorship that then becomes white fragility, right? You center your own feelings in it. And then you're like, no, nobody can tell me anything. You're saying that I harmed you, but I don't want to accept that. Or even let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say, I don't understand how you harmed me. Now I'm going to run away and tell everyone how mean you were to me. Like, and that's that white nonsense, that white, like, it is classic to me. It's just like classic white people shit. And I'm just like, why are you behaving in this way? Now, I
They
was
don't
not present
realize
for these
though. That's
conversations.
the thing. But that's the thing. They're so entrenched in their own white society that I genuinely don't think that they realize when they are uh like being like acting like victims, and when they are self-centering, and when they embody white fragility. I think that they honestly I, I read this really interesting thing, and like I don't want to misquote it, and I also don't want to say the wrong thing, but it was this one professor who gave a talk, and like it was a few months ago. But then again, like what is time now? But they essentially compared white people to people like how was it that whites like whiteness is a sickness, basically is what they said, and they got real like a lot of trouble because like they're a person who is like I think their background is like they're Desi, like they're Indian, and they lived in the States, and they are a professor at the in the US, and they do something on race relations. But I remember reading when you know like the article that was talking about how like this comment that this professor made just had like a lot of backlash. Never like, but the thing is, they didn't really care to listen to the rest of the conversation or the rest of the talk that she was
They
giving. But
took it out of
essentially, she was
context.
pardon? Oh yeah, they took it out of context. But when you think about it, because like she was basically saying that, but there was a lot of nuance to what she was saying. Where like in a society where there is white supremacy, and white supremacy is kind of the father, white supremacy is the father of all of these awful isms and a lot more. Um, and it benefits you when you're called in and you're told like you are, you know, perpetuating all of this. I kind of see why people get the way that they do, if that makes sense. Just because I think not condoning it, obviously. That's hella fucked up. But I think, you know, I think that's why a lot of Karens also react the way that they do when like they're confronted with like a person of color filming them when they're committing all those atrocities. Like they get hysterical on their phone, and it's like I think it's genuinely like something goes snap in their brains. And I don't know what it is, you know. I think somebody way more smart than me can do an entire research on this, but like it's there must be a correlation between white fragility and, you know, that whole mess. Because the way that people act sometimes is just it's very violent. And especially like you said, especially when it's a loving call-in, like you really don't have to act that way. In fact, that's kind of disappointing. So
Yeah,
specific
and it's like really,
exactly. Yeah.
it's just so harmful and so violent. And so, you know, when we're talking about white saviorism, I think it's really important to really keep things in perspective. You know, if you are a white person who is advocating on behalf of POC, my baby's outside, she's calling for me. If you're a white person who is advocating for POC and you've been invited in the space, you are always a guest in that space. Always. You are a guest, which means that your right to be there can be revoked. Like,
Totally.
check yourself. So anyway, I'm really glad that we had this talk because we've been meaning to address it, to like really, really talk about white saviorism.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's more that we could say about it because it's a very complex.
We'll probably talk about it again.
It's like all over, all over. And like Tanya said, like well-meaning POC can also be like not victims, but guilty of it as well. So
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I think so. It's 10 after 9 right now. I think we got to call it, and I have to let my baby in. My cat, not my like actual children.
Yeah,
for anybody
for sure. Yes,
concerned with safety. I was like, I have a Instagram live, get out, and I kicked him out.
Oh, where'd he go?
No, Gabriel's he is with my parents right now. They took him swimming to Millwoods because it got.
Oh, that's so. I love the rec center. Is it the rec center? I'm assuming. I don't know.
No, yeah.
So many memories.
Like the Millwoods pool where they have like the wave pool. Apparently, it just
yes.
got a makeover. It's gorgeous now, from what I've heard. I haven't seen it, but like, do you want to go?
That used to be my hangout back in like
really?
my 13-year-old days. Well, yeah, I remember like I'm a Southsider, so of course like I have like friends in like Millwoods and all over. So, can you do me a favor and not post this because we like the grid. You know how I am anyway. Marcella's OCD.
Yeah, that is. Are not to go post this charla.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But yes, okay. So I sent some hearts because Kanish was so funny. And I tried to so I sent them, and then now I can't see any of the comments. So I don't know what happened.
Oh, shoot.
But to everyone who tuned in and who commented and who shared their thoughts with us, I love you. You are amazing, and I'm so grateful to all of you. Yeah, and as always, if you guys have any questions or any thoughts, feel free to DM us. We will absolutely love to continue this conversation.
And honestly, thank you for holding space because I know we've talked about this a few times, so appreciate it. Okay. Goodbye, my friends. Bye, Tanita. Love you. Bye. Bye, Bradcito. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, Tasha. Bye, Irania.
How do I get out of this Instagram live? What is happening? Why live? I can't see what is happening here. Oh no. Why do you work? Why am I old? Oh my God.